Welcome back to the Resident Evil film series. Audiocast, part 3. Today we're going to be talking about the third film in the series. And instead of keeping up with what I've said before, I liked this film. There's a lot wrong with it, and I'm going to crap all over it, but I'm going to praise some stuff, because as plenty of people have said before, schlock can be very entertaining. And Resident Evil Extinction has no shortage of schlock. We begin our film with Alice giving you a retelling of what happened and what's happening in between Resident Evil Apocalypse and Resident Evil Extinction, because they decide to continue half of the plot points and they discard the other half. Okay, more like they keep 30% of the plot points and they discard 70% of what Resident Evil Apocalypse picked up on. For example, there's no Jill Valentine in this film. There is no Abigail Ashford. It's like she stopped existing. It's like she vanished off the face of the earth. It's like the T-virus escaped the quarantine zone of the nuke crater that is Raccoon City for some reason. And that some reason the virus is a plant killer too. It sucked up all the water and the plants, and everything dried up until it was all gone, and everything turned into the Mojave. Since they probably couldn't afford to actually change everything into the Mojave. They just filmed it in the Mojave, which is probably what they did. Which is because they actually are in the Mojave, because they're like close to Vegas, Salt Lake City, and all that other stuff. They're in the desert. That's where this film takes place. It's the desert. Everything's withered and died. So you're like, let's set our film, because the planet began to wither and die, as Alice said in the dumb intro thing. So let's go to the place that has already withered and died to something. Fuck if I know. So they're in the desert, and we pick up our film with a convoy. A bunch of rigged up buses, trucks, vans are on the highway in a post-apocalyptic desert wasteland where zombies are shambling in the sands and they're being run over on the highways because they have to be nomadic. These survivors have to be nomadic because the zombies apparently can smell living people, and they are just walking. They're shambling through the sands behind this convoy, miles and miles and miles behind. So they're ever shambling, and they have to always be on the move because the zombies are coming. They're coming, man. They're coming, so you got to be on the move. They're hunting for fuel, they're hunting for food, and there's not enough of either one. In this convoy, we have two returning characters from Resident Evil Apocalypse. One I am happy to see, one I am not happy to see. The one I'm happy to see is Carlos Oliveira, played by somebody whose name I can't remember. He was fine in Apocalypse before Alice showed up. All of his action scenes with his other commando buddies were all fun, dumb schlock, but it was all very, very entertaining. He was fine. And then he stopped being as effective of a soldier when Alice showed up, because of course we have to make Alice badass by comparison. And the only way we can make Alice badass is by making other people less badass than they already were, because so Olivier is back, and he has teamed up with Claire Redfield. Claire Redfield was one of the main protagonists in Resident Evil 2. She was looking for her brother in Raccoon City because Chris Redfield was one of the protagonists in the first Resident Evil game. Since these films did not cover the events of Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil 2, the closest thing Apocalypse would be is towards Resident Evil 3. So, yeah, it's like Mr. Anderson was like, oh yeah, the Redfields! So Claire Redfield is in the third film, alongside Carlos Oliveira, and the other returning character is LJ, because we needed him. We needed LJ. He has nothing to do in this movie. He has nothing to do in this movie. He has no reason for being in this movie other than, hey, you want to come back? I wish they brought Abigail Ashford back, age her up to maybe like a preteen or teenager or something. Like, you could have replaced Kmart with Abigail Ashford. That would have been fine. Oh, let's talk about Kmart. Kmart is this teenager girl who is hanging out with Claire Redfield on the convoy. She has no character development. She has no backstory. She's just, oh, I'm Kmart because that's where they found me. Cool. Right. Okay. Nothing against that character. Nothing against that actress. I just wish they brought Abigail Ashford back instead of LJ, because, Abigail Ashford was continuing the T-Virus storyline, and they decided to just drop all of that, and just say, oh, the T-Virus withered, the planet is all withering and dying, all the zombies, and all, because, the virus kills plants too, because it does. It does, yes. So they're on the convoy, they're on the road, and they stop by some sort of gas station to look for gas. There's no gas. They look into the little mini-mart looking for supplies, and there's nothing. So they move on to the next place, which is a hotel. They scout out the hotel to clear it out of zombies. LJ gets bitten, but he hides it because he's selfish. He hides it. He hides that he's bitten because he doesn't want to die or something. And, like LJ, you know what you... Oh. So then we move on to Alice, who's on a motorcycle. She still has her telekinetic superhuman Neo powers, and she's on the road, and she stops at KLKB, which is some sort of place that there was a radio distress call, which is really just a bunch of bandits trying to capture other survivors to have fun with them and steal their supplies, because, of course, people devolve into selfish little fucks in the post-apocalyptic wasteland instead of coming together, working together, because you realize that your numbers are so fucking small that you'd probably be more likely to survive if all of you banded together to work together. But no, let's devolve into banditry and kill off all the other survivors that may help you because we want your supplies. I hate bandits and raiders and all sorts of things in post-apocalyptic stories because they are the dumbest things that could ever come from a post-apocalyptic stories, because call me an idealist, but I think in a post-apocalyptic setting you would want to work together with your fellow survivors to, I don't know, help preserve your species. But these bandits are just bandits. They're trying to steal your things, because we have to have some villains. We have to have some villains that can talk instead of, zombies that go because we don't want any more of those. I think we got tired of those from the first two films. So now we have some bandits that Alice has to kill, and she kills the bandits. She leaves KLKB, and that's the end of that scene. We just had to show her doing something. So she did something, and the convoy did something. And now we've established that those two things exist in this storyline. And then we move on to Dr. Isaacs. He's still alive. He's now living in the Hive. The remnants of the Umbrella Society are now living in underground hives, underground bunkers, trying to figure out how to reverse a situation that has completely gone out of hand. Resources are dwindling, food supplies are dwindling, manpower is dwindling, fuel is dwindling, and they're running out of time. And Dr. Isaacs is trying to figure out how to reverse the zombification, or figure out how to use the zombies as a labor force and reverse the whole infectious T-virus shit. And he's not having too much luck. He's like, I need to find the Alice specimen, because he's been cloning Alice over and over and over. He's been cloning Alice's to try to figure out how to get the formula correct to have somebody who bonded with the T-virus on a cellular level, like this Project Alice that's out in the Mojave has done. So that's what Dr. Isaacs is doing, and he's growing increasingly desperate during that. Next, we have the convoy that spends the night at this hotel, and then they realize that there's a bunch of crows, a bunch of zombie crows that have been feeding on infected flesh, and have hunted them down. There's a murder of crows, and they're all attacking the convoy. And then Alice shows up, and she's like, superpowers! Oh, and let's talk about LJ for a moment. Before the crows showed up, in the middle of the night, LJ, who is slowly deteriorating, because the infection rate depends on who's infected. If Rain's infected, then it's just a couple hours. If Oliveira's infected, he doesn't turn. 3 hours have passed, the antivirus works for him, it doesn't work for Rain, who was infected for less time. I guess because she got bitten by more zombies, so it sped up faster. I don't fucking know. And the antivirus also, they don't have it, because, there's no Abigail Ashford, she doesn't have her lunchbox. There's no scientists that they decided to team up with who could remanufacture the antivirus that's in Abigail Ashford's lunchbox, because that would be the smart thing to do. That would be the smart thing to do with Abigail Ashford's storyline, but they discarded her. She just vanished into the wastelands for some odd reason. It's like she doesn't even exist anymore. The best part of your sequel, Apocalypse, you decided to just discard for the less interesting plot points. So LJ makes love to this other lady in the middle of the night. They share a can of food. I don't know what, pork and beans or something, in a can of pork and beans. They share that, and the next day the crows come in and they kill the LJ's lady, and they kill a bunch of other people, and they abandon the bus. Some other people die, and they get into other things, other vans. Alice shows up and she saves them from the crows, but since she used her telekinesis powers, the Umbrella Satellite's like, oh, I found Alice! And then Dr. Isaacs is like, oh, I found Alice! So then he assembles a team. Oh, and Wesker's here. Wesker's in the Tokyo Hive, and he's the chairman. He's Chairman Wesker now. He's in charge of the Umbrella Corporation. And he's telling Dr. Isaacs, don't go after Alice. I don't care if it's 60% likely that it's her. You are to focus on how to unfuck our fucked situation. But Dr. Isaacs, he's desperate. And he's like, I can't unfuck this situation unless I get Project Alice back. So he assembles a team by using a computer to mimic Wesker's voice. And then just has that voice recording of Wesker sent to some Umbrella soldiers, and under Dr. Isaacs' team, under Dr. Isaacs' leadership, and they send them out, blah, 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 blah. They set up a trap in Las Vegas, because they have to hit a major city to get some fuel and resources. So that's what they do. The sands of the Mojave have started to swallow up Las Vegas, because we don't fucking know how much time has passed, maybe a couple years, but it looks like 20 years have passed. How long would it take for the Mojave to retake? Las Vegas, if all the people just vanished, how long would it take for the desert sands to swallow Vegas up? I'm thinking a couple decades, not a couple years. A couple years, sure, you might have some overgrowth all about the city, but it should probably just look like a ghost town. I know buildings are built cheap now, but we don't have major sand blockers that block out all the sands and stuff like that. I don't fucking know. It just wanted to make a cool set piece, I guess. I don't fucking know. So they're on the strip with all these major landmarks, like the mini Eiffel Tower, the mini Statue of Liberty, and all that stuff. They're on the strip, and there's sands that swallowed everything up. And they're like, oh no, the gas station's under the sands. And they're like, oh, what do we do? And then there's a fucking crate in the middle of the road, because we can't just drive around it. There's not like there's any roads left. We could just drive around to this crate, but no, we gotta stop and say, oh, we gotta figure out how to move this crate out of the way. And it's clearly a trap, because this crate looks like it was just dropped here. It wasn't just sitting here on top of the sands, untouched by the sands that have swept away the rest of Vegas. So all of these zombies get out of the crate to kill the rest of the survivors, and Alice gets shut down by the satellite. LJ turns into a zombie, because of course he does, and then he bites Carlos Oliveira, and Carlos has to kill him. And then Alice is like, okay, I'm not going to be controlled by the satellite anymore, because there's a chip that she fries in the satellite, because she's fighting the satellite with her telekinetic powers or whatever, and then the Umbrella satellite chip fries, and then it's no longer shutting her down, controlling her with all this cyber nanotechno babble. So now she's free to kill all the zombie soldier super zombies, and she kills all of them, saves the survivors, and then she hunts down Dr. Isaacs. And one of the zombies bites Dr. Isaacs, and she's like, "Give the antivirus! Give me the antivirus!" And he escapes in an helicopter, and Alice watches the helicopter escape, and she's like, "That's our ticket out of here. We're gonna fly to Alaska on that helicopter." So they assemble the rest of the team, and Carlos, who is bitten, and he's quickly deteriorating rapidly. He's like, alright, I will volunteer for a suicide mission. There's no gas in our tanker, but it's still going to explode, because I don't know. For the sake of movie, I'm going to imagine that after they killed all the super zombies and Dr. Isaacs escaped in a helicopter, they found a gas station and fueled up the tanker before they decided to raid the Umbrella Hive to get to the helicopter. That's what I'm thinking happened, because if that didn't happen off screen, then this makes no... So, Carlos drives the tanker into a horde of zombies to make an opening for the remaining vehicles to enter the Umbrella gated facility, which is basically a farmhouse, and underneath the farmhouse is the hive. So they get there. Claire Redfield, who basically contributed absolutely fucking nothing in this movie, she didn't even need to be here. She was just there to say, "Hey, Claire Redfield, remember that name?" She didn't do anything. She contributed nothing to this film. She did nothing other than lead the convoy and then let Carlos do everything. You could have just written all of Claire's stuff into Carlos's story and let Carlos be at least an important character, since he was already in the previous film. You might as well keep using him. You could have just written LJ out. You didn't need him either. You could have replaced Kmart with Abigail Ashford. Why not just replace Claire Redfield with Jill Valentine? Let's just keep the band back together. But no. You see, in the following sequels after these, we're going to insert these named characters from the games, because remember them? That's the only reason why they're here. Remember them from the games? Remember what they did here? And that's the only reason why they're here. So Claire Redfield is only here because she's Claire Redfield and she's from the games. Remember her? So she takes the remaining survivors on the helicopter, and Cameron's like, "You're not coming?" And Alice is like, "No, I've got to do something first," because she has to go down to the hive to stop Dr. Isaacs. So that's what she does. She goes down into the hive and confronts Dr. Isaacs. Dr. Isaacs has mutated into a super monster tyrant. Because you remember the tyrant? Remember the tyrant from the games? Remember how cool he was? Well, now there's a white queen. The red queen was in the Raccoon City hive. The white queen is this other AI counterpart girl who helps Alice in this hive, in the Mojave hive. I'm going to call it the Mojave hive. And the white queen AI helps Alice fight Dr. Isaacs, and Alice kills Dr. Isaacs using her telekinetic superpowers and all that crap. And they go into the laser grid room from the Raccoon City hive because Dr. Isaacs remanufactured this weird obstacle course of a bunch of shit from the first movie for every Alice clone to go through. I didn't mention this because it's arbitrary. It makes no fucking sense. But there's an obstacle course of set pieces from the first film that Dr. Isaacs manufactured in this hive to send all of the Alice clones through in order to test them and test their combat capabilities and their superpowers and all that bullshit. So there's a laser grid room in this hive, right? There's a laser grid room here. And an Alice clone activates it and kills the tyrant. And Alice realizes there's hundreds of Alice clones. And she has an AI who's on her side, the White Queen. And she's like, "I have a whole hive under my control now. I have so much power at my fingertips. I have all these guns, all this gear, all of this stuff. We have an AI to run this facility. We have self-sustaining power systems. We have fresh water. We can even manufacture antiviruses using my antibodies that I bonded with the T-virus on the cellular level, and I could figure out how to save the world with this." So what does she do? Well, at the end of the film, we have Albert Wesker in the Tokyo hive having another board meeting with the rest of the fucking Umbrella High Command, saying, "Resources are down even more, and we haven't been doing anything to stop this. Resources are down, they're going down." And Albert Wesker's like, and then the Mojave hive hologram activates, and it's Alice. And Alice is like, "Hey, Albert Wesker, I'm coming for you. And I've bringing some friends." And we see all of the clones, and then the film ends. As I said at the start of this audiocast, I liked this film. I liked it. It's full of dumb schlock. There's a lot of characters that didn't need to be here, like LJ, Claire Redfield, Kmart. I liked Carlos Oliveira. I liked that he did stuff. He did less useful stuff than he did in Apocalypse, but at least he's here doing stuff. You remember him, you know? Basically, all these movies are just, remember this? It's like telling you, it's like basically saying, remember this better thing that exists? Well, here's a worse thing, reminding you of these better things that exist. But it's some dumb schlock. And I remember this was that movie that aired on cable all the time. This was the one that they aired on cable all the time. FX, that channel FX, remember the TV, remember cable, FX has the movies, that channel would air Resident Evil Extinction all the time. And that's where I first watched this movie. over and over, because they would air it once a week. They would air it once a week. I guess they licensed X amount of movies every cycle, and they would just re-air them over and over until they get a new set of movies licensed that they could air. I guess that's how they do it. I don't fucking know. I'm not a TV cable dude. But then I picked this up, and that's where the third film comes into play. This is not as good as Apocalypse. It's not. But I like it more than Apocalypse. I know that doesn't make sense. Apocalypse has a better storyline. At least until Alice shows up. It has a better story with the T-Virus. It has a better Carlos Oliveira. It has a better named character from the games. Jill Valentine is far more competent than Claire Redfield ever was in these movies. I liked Jill Valentine a lot more than Claire Redfield. Abigail Ashford was great. Dr. Ashford is great. The director, man, is a lot better than Dr. Isaacs. There's a lot of stuff that was better in Apocalypse, but I don't know. There's something about Resident Evil Extinction that just reminds me of a Michael Bay movie. A Michael Bay Transformers movie. It's full of all of that dumb schlock. But we watch it. And we enjoy it. Because it's but it's fun. You can laugh at it. Oh, the crows. You can laugh at the crows. You could laugh at the tyrant. I thought you were the future, but I am the future. And Wesker being a chairman, dude, is just... And Alice being all the superpowers and shit. It was fun. It was a fun movie. Dumb schlock, but it was better than the second one, at least in terms of entertainment value. It was more entertaining, but it was worse. It was worse than the second movie, but it was more entertaining than the second movie. I know that doesn't make sense, but sometimes these movies just don't fucking make sense. My favorite film of this entire collection is going to come up next. I like it more than the first film. The first film is the best film, but this fourth movie is just so good to me. It was so good to me. I just loved it. We'll talk about that maybe some other day, sometime this week, sometime next week, I don't fucking know. When it gets uploaded, that's when you know it'll come up. This has been, and is continuing to be, the Resident Evil Films Audiocast. Signing off. And remember, be imaginative.